Evening to you, Mox.
Hey, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very good. I see green lines, and that's a very useful thing when we are streaming. I can hear
Green
you.
lines.
You
Is that my health bar over my head?
Right. Yeah, no, sir, did you flag for PV? No, if you're green, you did not, I believe.
That's right.
You
I am a filthy PvEer.
Filthy PvEer. Yeah, how dare you PvE in my PV peanut butter.
That's a classic one.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, looking forward to tonight. We have some good videos, hopefully some good conversation, and hopefully some good participation from our chat if we get anybody to show up for our mediocre content.
Right. We actually had a decent handful of folks turn up for the last one, and then the residual views was actually pretty surprising. Right? I don't expect anybody to care.
We shut down the stream, and I was like, dude, we went for like an hour and 20 minutes. Nobody's gonna watch that, and like it was a decent amount of people that watch it for us. You know, we get over 300 views. Like that's more than our subs, so that's a good thing.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And
Speaking of which,
and then one person will follow, and we're like, win. One
yeah,
sub,
exactly. If you are new to our content, please make sure that you do hit that like, you do hit that subscribe, and that you do hit the notification bell and comment about how wrong I am about PvP in Ashes of Creation.
everything. So yeah, we're gonna wait a minute or two and allow just some time for folks to show up. That's kind of the design of this thing, since it's live stream.
Yeah,
we can do that.
You know what we could do in this time while waiting for people? We could talk about like a really ancillary topic that came up in just one of the videos we're going to mention. We're not actually going to review it, but in the Lazy Peons video, there was some apparently aspersions cast upon the Lucky Ghost, who is one of the topics and focus of our video reviews. Right. The fact that he ran an ad. Now, you know, if you've been around the streaming community and you've been around the YouTube community, you know that people do in-video ads.
Yeah, you know,
right?
When you're like 30% of the way in, maybe 20% of the way in, and the next thing you know, they're like, hey, let's talk about Raid Shadow Legends. Yeah, which, of course, we're not. We're not promoting them because they haven't decided to sponsor.
They haven't paid us to do it, but you know, I'm sure it's a very fine game. And by the way, developers of Raid Shadow Legends, if you do want some mediocre guys to promote your game, please hit us up. Yes. But in all seriousness, like video ads, like ads in the video happen, and you know, just deal with it. Like, don't like get all up in arms about it. Like, it's ridiculous.
And it's bothersome. I mean, like, if I'm watching something, next thing I know, I'm looking at an ad for NordVPN or something, right? We're using that as an example too, but you skip it. You go, okay,
right?
It can only be about this much of the percentage of this thing. You know, okay, it looks like it's mostly over by now, and typically
it's one of the things I like about watching soccer games. Like, you only get ads before the game, during halftime, and after the game. Like, it's like the actual game doesn't get interrupted. But I don't yell at the TV because in between innings of a baseball game, there's ads, or like in between, you know, plays of a football game, there's sometimes ads. Like, it's life. It's how people and businesses make money.
Yes, unless it's the Super Bowl, in which case ads are why you're there. Most of the time.
Yes, there is a fine amount of people that are there just for the ads.
That's why I watch the Super Bowl. It's the ads. Right. That's who I'm rooting for. That's what I want to win.
Right.
You know.
But you're not a big sports ball guy anyway, so.
Well, I would be if those Cowboys could get an edge on the Eagles. You know, if we could just get that happening, I'd start to
ain't happening
believe in Jerry's team.
All right, why don't we get into this? I think we've waited long enough. We're about 5 minutes in. Let's go ahead and kick off and talk about PvP and do we need to have a PvE server in Ashes, and how will the PvE system be affected by PvE folks? It's kind of the whole heart of this discussion, right?
Okay. Well, let me know when you want to switch to the videos scene, and we'll do that. Are you wanting to cover? So we can link in the description, which we will after.
Already have.
Oh, you already have.
It's in there.
The Lazy Peon video. That's the one I
no,
want to
not
make
that
sure.
one. Yeah, that one I will add.
Okay, yeah. So it really, and it was kind of like an update to his still the most whatever, the savior of the genre for Ashes of Creation video that he put out fairly recently. It's an addendum to that because there's been so many changes over the last 3 months, and maybe the last third of it or last quarter of it he dedicated to this discussion that we're about to have tonight on PvP that LuckyGhost started. He poked the bear, right?
He poked the bear. Steven Sharif picked up the aggro and had something to say about that, and we will be covering that too. So our goal tonight is to be brief about the LuckyGhost, and be briefish about what Steven Sharif had to say. But
we will be talking about PvE servers in the midst of that, I don't doubt. So that's really the thought that I'm going to get these guys mixed up, but the lazy peon was speaking to. So check his video out too. Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and get started then.
Begin, Mox.
All right, so here we go with
us in
with the LuckyGhosts video.
Do we have sound? We don't have sound here.
Now probably has some of you already furiously typing on your keyboard about how I'm trying to kill another MMO. But you're wrong. Quite the opposite. I'm trying to save Ashes of Creation. So hear me out before you leave a comment, because you'll likely realize I'm on your side. I just want Ashes to succeed. But if Ashes of Creation goes through with its current design without changing anything, its chart is going to look no different than any other dying MMO today. I don't say...
Let me pause here for a second. I think this bears saying that I think some of the hardcore Ashes fans think that any criticism of Ashes immediately means that the criticizer wants it to fail.
Right.
Like, it's impossible to be critical without getting attacked for being a Care Bear or wanting them Steven to lose his money.
Right.
And that's not the case.
I think the same is probably true of Pantheon. I mean, like, there's folks who would assume that,
yeah.
So,
to a degree.
But I agree with the point, right? I think that people that take it overboard, right?
You can be critical without wanting it to be bad. Just saying, hey, let's think about this before we get to launch.
Yes.
And it bombs.
Agreed.
I know how much copium some of us are sucking in, hoping that Ashes of Creation will be the next MMO
Narc
to
shows up
rekindle
everywhere.
our love for the genre. Trust me, I'm sucking in more of this stuff than Narc, and he's literally made of it at this point. But there is a massive problem most of you are ignoring, and that problem is you don't like Ashes of Creation. Ashes of Creation in its currently planned design is not made for you. If you are a WoW player, an ESO player, a Final Fantasy XIV player, a Guild Wars 2 player, chances are you're gonna hate AOC once you get past the first few days. Heck, I even asked you guys if you would like a game like AOC, and you said no. I just asked in a way where you didn't know I was asking about AOC. I posed the question like this. How would you feel about an open world MMO with always on PvP that you could never turn off? 82% of you...
How many people wouldn't know he was talking about Ashes of Creation, though?
Yeah, no, I agree.
How much of that 82% didn't know? Like, probably not a large percentage.
Yeah. By the way, I want to say hello to Agent Iron Spider, who's joined us in chat. Good to have you here.
Oh, hey, Spider. Happy to have you here, sir. And yes, I believe that you would have been told that if you were critical of Pantheon. Everybody has their passion projects and feels like that, but, you don't have to. Like, we can criticize without hating.
One way or the other said, no way, not for me. And I would wager that the 18% that voted that you would want this, a substantial portion of you have never played an MMO with the AOC's proposed PvP system.
Assumption.
And before you say, hey, I have played Lineage 2 or some other MMO where you can kill anyone, anytime with a flagging system that turns people purple and red based on how everything transpires, I am well aware a handful of you love this type of PvP. You are the rule 34 of PvP. You are an outlier. Yes, you like it. The problem is almost nobody else does. Ashes of Creation's PvP is a one-to-one replica of the PvP system from Lineage 2. I have played it. I have lived it. I have thousands of hours in that system.
Let me pause.
It was my first...
Not a one-to-one replica. Okay. Steven is fully aware. I'll let him defend himself because we are going to check in on that segment of the live stream, right? The monthly live stream where he actually responded to this video. to claim, I think, to claim that, well, it's just a complete copy and paste is not true. He's aware and has played it and has come out of that. Because I was asking the same thing. I'm like, why would he do that? Why would he go and live that and then come and do the same thing here? Because apparently it didn't go very well in Lineage 2. Right. There are some tweaks that he has made, and he believes that the tweaks are going to sufficiently deter the griefing. Now, right. We'll talk about that, right? But I just want to throw that out there right now. And hello to Jim McKenzie. Good to see you.
Hey, Jim.
As well.
MMO, and I degened it like the disgusting goblin of an MMO fiend that I am. What this means is I know every single problem with the system and how detrimental it's going to be to an MMO that tries to implement it in the modern day. Now, I don't expect you to just take my word for it. So in this video, I'm going to go over those problems and the inevitable effect they will have on the game's performance over time. I will also go over some proposed solutions and ask for you to propose solutions in the comments as well. My goal in this video is not to stifle interest in AOC, quite the opposite. I saw the Archer playtest and I am in love with the world they have created. I want to get lost in that world. I want Ashes of Creation to do well, but I am also painfully aware of exactly why it won't if it doesn't address the problems I'm going to bring to light in the video today. The first and most obvious problem is that Ashes of Creation is an always-on open world PvP game, and 90% of MMO players flat out won't enjoy that. That means right from the beginning, almost everyone that tries this game is sure to not like it. But you know what they will like?
An ad.
I love that. I love his smirk, right? He's like, that's almost like the Grinch.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and try to jump past the ad, but the point there is that that there will be some people that don't like it. There will be some people that don't mind it. To say most of it's going to bleed away immediately, it's a pretty bold statement.
It is, yeah.
I think a lot of it's going to depend on, have you found a community? Are you part of a group? Because going out in groups is going to be so much safer than going out soloing in this game. Not totally safe, as he's going to go on to say, but it will help.
Yeah, I mean, I think any kind of prediction as to there's going to be a huge drop-off within 4 weeks is there's no way to know that, right? I would be handy if there was I think every studio would love to have the equation, right? If you just plug in, here we got this and this and that and the other thing, and you get the drop-off number, then they tweak the variables and find out how can we maximize retention, and that would be what they would do, So it's incalculable.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I had to throw big words in. I'm not me if I don't. So,
but yes, and to our chat's point there, we won't really know until we try it. You've got to try it a little bit, but it really wasn't a lot of open world PvP going on when you got to try it. So. Yeah. When they did turn it on, apparently it was a huge gank fest. So, maybe LuckyGhost is right. Again, we're going to have to see when they do a more extensive test with the corruption system in place, what actually happens.
You can count Alpha 1. Alpha 1, there weren't any of the risk versus reward aspects, right? To none of that was running. It was just open, right? So
yeah. All right. Let's see what else he has to say. Now we're going to get into the meat of this.
Ashes of Creation. After the very brief stint of starting up and enjoying a few fun levels in the low-level areas, in the new world, the PvP will kick in. The griefing will kick in. It's been proven time and time again that MMOs that focus solely on PvP players never achieve more than a niche status in the MMO genre. The best they can hope to do is to carve out a tiny corner of a tiny market for themselves and their players. I think AOC can satisfy both groups. I really do. I think it can satisfy the PvP sweatlords who are happiest when others are rage quitting the game because of them. I think it can also satisfy the PvE players who just want to get lost in a beautiful MMO and come together to take down epic raid bosses, dungeons, and occasionally group up for PvP content when they want to. And I'll go ahead and tell you how I think AOC can achieve this before the video's over. But here's the rub, the inescapable fact that if you're a PvE main in the MMO of your choice, you won't like Ashes of Creation. You won't like when you're trying to level with your friends and a group of sweaty players comes and bullies you out of your spot. Oh, did the community work hard to upgrade a node and unlock a new dungeon? That's nice, but I've seen how that plays out. You won't be allowed inside that nice new dungeon. Sorry, that's gonna be locked down by one of two groups of players. If you're lucky, it's gonna be locked down by the sweatiest, most degenerate PvP guild on the server. If you go inside, they'll grief you until you leave. Griefing is gonna be something that comes up a lot in this video because all the poor and
Okay, let's pause here because we really need to take a second to talk about griefing. But I think there's a question to you in the chat.
Yes, okay, so Jim has asked, would an opt-out version work for AOC, or is the PvP too tied to core systems of the game? I think, Jim, the latter is true. And if you look at the Lazy Peon video, in the beginning of the live stream, we were mentioning Lazy Peon's put a video out that kind of is an update to his latest, hey, here's why I'm a big fan of the Ashes of Creation. And it's short, and it's just covering the last 3 months. But he spends a time at the end of the video really addressing this question because it's been the topic of debate in the community lately. And I thought did a really good job talking about how the game begins to fall apart if you look at some kind of a PvE server type for Ashes, right? If you said, okay, we're going to allow it begins to unravel. There's too much. It's too core as an assumption within the systems. An example is the bounty system, right? The bounty system would become nothing. Like, you wouldn't even use it. Nobody would do anything to flag as a bounty to show up on the map. Your shipping lanes, right? Moving from, port to port, dodging pirates as an open PvP ship-to-ship area would essentially just become, hey, okay, wait for 10 minutes while we push numlock, right? And just coast across the water aimed at that port, right? Everybody would just wait around. Caravans are a PvP system, right, within the game, but it's still within the open world. So if you nullify the PvP, caravans really just become a way to waste your time moving stuff from place to place. So it begins to just erode at that, and who knows where those ripples would end up, right? So I think definitely, we'll amend our description content after this, and include that link for Lazy Peon's video. Definitely go check that out, I would say.
I put a link of it in the chat.
Okay, excellent.
For people for now, if they want to grab it to watch after we're done. Let me comment on that though. Caravans and sieges and things like that all could still be opt-in. Like, if I'm going to run a caravan, it's got to be PvP. It doesn't mean you have to have the entire world open PvP, but there could be select mechanics that are PvP centric, and if you are going to do that, then the risk versus reward comes into play. You don't have to say, well, then we could just move things around willy-nilly. You could say, you know what, we're going to turn off PvP out in the world for purposes of leveling and moving around and things like that. But if you want to move goods from point A to point B, you have to do it be flagged for it.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, but that's still forced PvP, right? Which we don't like so much. If you want to move goods from any node to any other node, you have to engage in PvP as a route to do that. And I think the hardcore PvEers who don't want anything to do with PvP would resent that, right? And I think that's fair if they do. If they don't want to, they don't like that. That's okay. I think there's nothing wrong with having your preferences.
Yeah. Spider's saying that's not a link, so give me a second. Let me up into YouTube Studio and go into this. You can start the video up again while I'm doing this.
Okay.
I'm just going to edit the description while he's...
Right. He is talking right here about, and I've got a lot of commentary I kind of want to have on the way that groups become a mitigating factor for risk. I think what I'm going to do is, let's push through this, but I'll make a footnote here and say, hey, when we get to the Steven video where Steven talks about his answer to this is using risk versus reward, right? So what I'll do is preface it right now and say, here's how that works, right? Well, how does risk versus a reward make, change how griefing, is supposed to act? If let's say there's a whole bunch, everybody in the United States smokes, right? This is kind of one of the things that they've actually done. So it's actually a really good example of it, right? Smoking is far and wide. and the government decides they want to disincentivize the population from doing it. What they do is tax cigarettes more, and that means that there's an effect that it has, right? You have a handful of people that go, that's not going to affect me. I'm too dedicated to this. I'll do this till I die. And they will. They'll do it till they die. There will be people that do it for a while and realize it becomes too expensive and then drops off. And then people immediately, they go, wow, the taxes are so high on this. There's no way I'm going to waste that money on that activity. I'm going to stop doing it, right? And they begin to stop immediately. That's Steven's paradigm when it comes to griefing out in the open world, right? So he says, okay, the people that do griefing out in the open world are getting a reward out of it. They, whatever that reward happens to be, they get their jollies from causing someone else to suffer or making them rage quit or whatever it is. They are reaping a reward from that. They do it because there is something they get out of it. And I think hurt people. You've heard that, right? Whatever miserable thing it is about them that makes them want to grief, it is there, right? But so what he does is he turns up the potential cost of that. And we'll go into what all of there's a ridiculous list. The more I look at it, I don't know if I would ever go griefing. Turn up that cost, and now there's enough of a cost to where I'm thinking twice. If I grief, I'm subject to all of this cost. That's his idea. Now, we'll talk about whether that's effective. We'll talk about ways that people may mitigate those costs when we get to that. But I just want to preface this whole conversation. Think in terms, when you get to Ashes of Creation, think in terms of risk versus reward, because that's a large part of the PvP, right?
Absolutely.
All right, Marks, have you added the link to chat?
I did. I added it to the description so they can refresh, and it will be in there.
Okay, let us
that
proceed.
have never played in this flagging system are under the assumption that they are going to be protected by this flagging system. And this could not be more wrong. You will not be protected by this flagging system. This flagging system is easily abused and circumvented in its current design. And this is my primary reason for making this video. Steven, if you are listening, you cannot recycle this flagging system from a game from 2003 without changing it substantially or adding more systems to protect the players. You must improve upon it to protect the players.
He agrees with that too.
Griefers. Because, as you know, griefers not only survive under the system, but they thrive under the system. And I know, I'm not going to say anything that Steven isn't aware of. He played this game as well. He played Lineage 2, but he also hasn't addressed these problems publicly. So either he's hoping it's just going to work out, or he's thinking the rest of the game will be good enough to retain players in spite of these glaring flaws. And I'm warning you all now, it won't. It can't be. These flaws cause way too many quit moments daily for most of the players in the game. Now I'm going to explain why, and I'm also going to ask you, the viewer, to help come up with a solution. If you think of a way to improve upon this system to protect normal players from griefers, leave it in the comments below. So back to the scenario we began to describe. If your group is in a dungeon and you're merrily grinding along, the guild that has this dungeon locked down will show up and flag on you. They will not go red on you because generally the punishment for going red is good enough that it prevents players from doing so excessively. I say generally because it's not always effective, but we'll touch more on that later. However,
let me clarify real quick. The coloring scheme, right? There is, let's hope I get this right. If you're green, you are out there, you're subject to open world PvP, because everything is open world PvP, but you are not out there fighting, right? You're not out there to fight. PvE, essentially, mode. If you go purple in Ashes of Creation, and I know this is 101 for many people, but just for those who haven't, if you flag yourself as purple, you are a PvP combatant. Advertising it, you're a PvP combatant, and as long as you don't go fight green people, you can go fight purple people, and there's not a problem, right?
Yeah, you can fight red people, and there's no problem.
Purple people. If you go kill green people, then you get red, and red is corrupted, is what they're calling it, and that is subject to all of the disincentives that they have in place, right? So there's those three kind of categories of folks, and so as he refers to the different colors as we go forward, just know that that's really the definitions.
Well, yeah, just hang on a second. So I'm, let's say I'm purple, and I come across a group that's fighting mobs, and they're all green, and we decide that we're going to kill them, but we decide that I'm going to be the guy, or half of our group is going to engage them and kill them, but the other half isn't. Then so half the group becomes red, but then the half that isn't can simply just kill off their teammates, clear the corruption, loot their stuff, and give it back to them when they get back there.
Right. And this is we'll get into this again, right? But this is one of the many aspects or the things that you can do to mitigate those the risk, right? The risk that Steven says as the disincentives for griefing. There are things that people will figure out, insurance policies, right? The ways to mitigate risk. So
all right, so you can have your friends kill you and clear your corruption. And yes, Hawkins, you are 100% right. You do have to kill a green person in order to get ticked with corruption. Yes. The more green people you kill without clearing your corruption, the higher your corruption goes, and the more deaths you have to incur in order to clear that corruption.
Right. Yeah. Every death counts for a certain amount of it, so you got to die X amount of times. Or else you just stay corrupted. You can't log in, log out, and then log back in. You'll just be where you were. And also, the more the level disparity between you and who you killed. So, for instance, if you're a max level player killing, level 10s or whatever in their level 10 area, you get a higher, you get more corruption based on that
the level disparity.
Yeah.
And all of this is supposition, because we haven't seen the corruption system at play in a meaningful way yet.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard it talked about, we've heard the plans for it, but we've not seen what actually happens.
Right. Yeah, it demoed in a lot. Now, I want to say that I expect that they're probably going to give it a shot in Alpha 2. I believe that it's going to be lined up.
So, almost have to at this point, because you can't wait until later.
I think they need to give it a real world test with large numbers of people on a server. I think Alpha 2 is and you need as much time to address it as possible. I think Alpha 2 is kind of a necessity.
Right.
Okay, moving right along.
They don't need to go red, they'll go purple. Healer is throwing out big heals, trying to keep the mobs in the dungeon from killing the tank, because if their tank dies, the whole group wipes, and in the process, the healer is burning through their mana supply. The end is inevitable. You don't win this exchange as the group that's mid-pole against a sweaty PvP guild. The PvE group trying to enjoy the dungeon has two options, and both result in them losing. They would likely lose the fight even if they weren't already engaged with NPC enemies, because it's likely the top PvP guild locking down the dungeon. They are sweatier. They don't log out of the game. They are generally the group of players involved in all of the seediest forms.
All right, so let me pause this real quick as well. He's talking about, about open world dungeons, right? And how a group can camp it essentially and dominate it and ruin everyone else's experience going through this, so that they're really the only ones that have access to that. Right. I was doing a lot of reading and researching before this, and it occurs to me that there's a lot of griefing and malicious activities that you can do even on PvE servers, right? And we're saying, well, these are all PvP activities, but if you think in terms of what of these can I do on all of them, what of these are PvP server centric and what of these are PvE server centric,
right,
it becomes not as clear. Let me give you some examples, and I think this speaks to what he's mentioning in this video, right? So mob training, right? If I drag a bunch of mobs into a group that's fighting, so that when they drop AoE, now they pick up the aggro, and now they're overwhelmed and they get killed. I can do that on a PvE server, right? I can steal someone else's kills on a PvE server. I can run in,
because
steal
the
a boss
basis
from because
of who gets the kill is percentage of health.
Yes.
Reduced by your group. So whoever does the larger percentage gets the kill and gets the loot.
Yes, right. And so Ashes does give an edge to whoever gets the tag at initiates the fight. But someone else can come in, and if they do more percentage of damage, they get the loot, right?
Right.
Ninja looting. We're all very well of ninjas, right? Rolling on stuff they don't need. That can happen very much in PvE. Scamming. It happens to me frequently, all the time, when I am clearing out a mob so that I can get to a resource node, and someone else runs up while I'm fighting the mob and steals the resource node. That can happen on PvE. What can happen in both is camping like this, where a group can dominate a dungeon and they can use mob training as the weapon to make your life tough, right?
Right.
And then there's a litany of other things: verbal abuse, right? Reputation damage, or the things that people can do there, using the reporting system to mass report, right?
That was a huge thing in New World, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, they would kill the leader of the opposing war, right, in order to take them out.
They would basically get them banned or temporarily banned from the game for 24 hours, so they couldn't lead the invasion.
Right. Bug exploitation, let me throw that out there as well. So I want to be very careful as we talk about all of this, where we're not attributing all of the malicious behavior someone can do, griefing, to PvP activities. Not all of it is that way. Now he's going to mention a number of them here, like mob training and stuff like that. I don't say that that's necessarily PvP. It may not be. It could be.
It's not exclusive to PvP.
Yes, correct.
Right.
Okay.
Now it does also bear mentioning that the list of those griefing things, I believe Sakari is pulling from a academic paper that I found this week pertaining to griefing. It was a really interesting. Well, it's an academic paper, so it is dry, but it still was an interesting read that they were studying
40 pages.
griefing in MMOs,
right.
And there is a link to the article in our Twitter if you want to go check that out at Disparate Worlds in Twitter. You can look at that and kind of review it. I skimmed it. Like it was a little too much for me to read all the way through. We may revisit it. We have Sakari has a friend who is really into the academic side of gaming and the science of it, and we may down the road have him on to talk about this stuff. So
moving right along.
Yep.
Forms of play, meaning they RMT, they bot, they do anything it takes to be the #1 guild so that they can survive and dominate in this always on PvP game. You, the normal player trying to enjoy the dungeon after work, you don't stand a chance in an even fight, but that's not relevant because they're not going to attack while you aren't fighting NPCs. They're gonna wait until your tank is mid-pull and picking away at your team's health until NPCs kill you for them. If you fight back, you will go purple, and that is their biggest hope, because if you go purple, they can dispatch you all the quicker as they will unload on your team, which will be caught fighting them and the mobs that the tank pulled at the same time. If you're lucky, you won't be mid-pull when the other team rolls up. At this point, you'll either both stand there until one gets bored and leave, or you'll fight for the spot. It becomes not a battle of wills, but a battle of time. Who is willing to spend their night getting nothing done? Who has more time to waste in the game? And guess what? It's not you, it's them. They are the top guild that is holding this dungeon down because they don't have a life outside of this game. They're on it all day and all night, and they live to make other people quit the game.
Now, I'm going to say this. Let me throw this out there. This is a lesson that New World taught me very recently. Yes, at launch, the sweaty people come in from Rust, right? And they dominate the whole server, and there's nothing you can do about it. And they are and they're on 24/7, and that's it, right? It also happens to be that the people that do that are the ones that find the first exploits and take advantage of them and get themselves kicked off the server.
Right.
So, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months in, things tend to settle down a little bit. And I think that epic, these are the sweatiest, only really happen on the most populated servers. I would say if you're on a mid populated server or lower, less of a chance. They're out there to look to dominate, and there's nobody to dominate on small population servers. So I think that's something to take into account, right? There is a life cycle here, and they do get themselves banned the moment there's an exploit that comes across.
I think also it depends on what's to be gained from that, and I think we've learned in certain games that the devs are able to track a lot. Like when it comes to getting gains from doing an exploit, the devs can dig and find the people that broke the rules and slap them on the wrist. But if we're talking about people that are currency farmers and things like that, they don't care, because they have 700 other accounts that they'll just go on to the next one and make a new one to replace the one that got banned and pick right up.
Right.
So, all right.
The more miserable you are, the happier they are. It is a direct correlation for them. You might eventually choose to duke it out, or you might choose to waste their time until you have to sign off for the night, feeling good that they got nothing done, but also knowing you didn't have fun. You just wasted the 3 hours you had to play stalemating with one of the sweatiest PvP guilds in the game. They will do this until you leave the dungeon, and they will keep doing it until you decide not to come back. So you'll go to the second most interesting spot in the game to level with your friends, and guess what? The second sweatiest PvP guild will be locking that back down. Or the best PvP guild will get bored of their area
doesn't
because
have
no
high
one's going there anymore,
expectations of-
and they'll come
No, he
knocking
does
on
not.
your door again, looking for people to grief, hoping to get a quick, uneven exchange where they can kill you while you're mid-pole or outnumbered yet again. And I'm not making this up out of thin air. These are not hypothetical situations. This is exactly what happens. Lineage 2 had the exact same open world design. It had the exact same flagging PvP system to a T. There is
Again,
nothing
not the
different
exact
in the
same.
design of the PvP and AOC from Lineage 2
Steven is
from
making
20
changes.
years ago that is going to stop this from happening. The system is inherently flawed. It rewards griefing. It rewards being an asshole. It promotes a style of play that ensures that only one group is allowed to have fun at a time. Now, I said earlier, you'd be lucky if the sweatiest PvP guild on the server was the one locking the dungeon down. And you're probably wondering, why would I be lucky if it's the sweatiest PvP guild on the server? My sweet summer lamb, ripe for the
you,
slaughter.
Mox,
You have
right
so
there.
much to learn about purple
Ripe
and
for the
red
slaughter.
flagging systems in an open world. The other option is it's the RMT guild locking it down. The people, often from other countries, who turn playing this game into a job where they sell their drops and their gold for real money on third-party websites. They always have the best gear, they always bot, and they're always reinforced by more bots. They are usually the only ones capable of keeping even the sweatiest PvP guilds out of an area. They will employ all of the dirtiest tricks in the book, including but not limited to the ones I've mentioned so far. They will also have new tricks. They will have characters that they bought up to high levels, specifically for going red on your group if you
I do have to comment, that mount is incredible. I mean, just the
Yeah.
design. Every single time I see this video, I'm just amazed at that mount. Sorry, I had to throw that out there. Yeah, moving on.
don't go away. They will run them into the dungeon and log them out there. Anytime you go into that dungeon to group up and they can't down you by griefing you, they log in their perma red character and kill your healer. Usually quite effectively because this
Now, that actually I don't think is going to be very viable to have a single red character because of the diminishing attack power that you incur when you go red. Like, it's apparently significant the first time around and only gets worse the more kills you have.
Yes, and again,
So-
that's how Steven has, and it seems to me LuckyGhost is not familiar with all of the measures Steven has taken, having experienced this.
Right.
Yeah,
He's not familiar with the nuances of the and to have made a video about this without being informed about everything.
It's risky.
It might have been a little bit of a mistake.
Yeah.
is decked out. If you do kill it and it does drop some of its gear, they'll pick it up instantly, probably via some bot software that does so faster than any human could ever have a chance to compete against. Yes, this also actually happened. Again, I don't have to make this up. I lived it. And in the off chance you do get a piece of gear, it doesn't matter. They have literally unlimited funds to replace it 10 times over because the game is their job. They are literally selling their excess for real money. The more they keep you down, the more money they make by selling to that sweaty, do anything to win PvP guild on the server. And before you tell me that AOC will be the first MMO in history to not have any bots, please spare yourself the embarrassment. It will. Every MMO has bots. It is, however, possible that AOC does a better job than AAA companies like Blizzard and NCSoft at detecting.
Did you ever stop to read this when
No.
you watch video? It's I'll summarize it, but it's somebody who's so absolutely frustrated. They're like, I'm going to cancel all my accounts, and you had better fix this. That's all I said. And then like, I'm so mad about this. I don't even care if I get flamed in this forum.
Yeah.
That's how mad they are. So poor guy. And he's a member of the Divorced Dads Alliance. So he's probably some poor 45-year-old guy who's playing after work. You know what I'm saying?
That's a funny name of a guild.
Yeah. Moving right along.
And eliminating these bots. But even if we achieve this unobtainable bot-free world that you so desire, all of the problems I mentioned about griefing are still there. The flagging system AOC is proposing is not going to work. Lineage 2 was an amazing game in its time, but the genre has evolved. EverQuest, which came out just a few years before, was also an amazing game in its time. Almost no one would play EverQuest now, and almost no one will endure this type of griefing in 2022 and beyond. They'll just quit. You will quit. I repeat, you will quit. AOC will be...
All right. Speaking of quitting, let's pause it right there, and can we take a second now to unleash the Steven's adaptations to this system?
Because you want to jump over to that and then come back to
we'll
here?
bring it in, right? Yeah, because we'll gloss through it instead of crossing that bridge when we get there. When
All right,
Steven
let
talks.
me take note of where we are on this one so that we're...
No. We can move through it really quickly with Steven, but I just want to put it out. We're referring to it so much I think we need to have it in our minds.
I can't have two separate. I have to bring up, like, I have to close this one and go back. Go to another. I think.
No, don't change videos. Is what I'm saying. Okay. All right. I have a list here. Right. So I'm happy.
Okay.
I have a. All
right. I did not take notes on Stevens. I was counting on us playing it, but if you want to go, with me being uninformed, so you have a leg up on me, I see how you are.
This is actually more from the wiki, actually.
Okay.
Now, Steven just drops these things. When he's in the video, he's like, well, here's one thing, and here's another thing that we're doing, another thing, right? But for the sake of having it all out there. All right, so if you become a corrupted player, i.e. red flagged, you've killed one of these green people who is just out there minding his own business.
Yes.
Here are the things to which you are subject.
So I'm dead on the ground now, and some sweaty PvPer killed me.
Yes, this is what happens to the sweaty PvPer.
Okay.
Most likely me. Okay, so all right. So the first thing that happens to you is skill and stat dampening. So your health, your mana, and your lower and your gear efficiency are all lowered. The greater, I believe, there's a correlation, right? So the more corrupted you are, the worse it is, to the point where you can do 0 damage. At least that's what I believe, having read the wiki, if my understanding is correct. If I'm wrong, I invite anybody to correct me.
And this was not something that was in Lineage 2.
Maybe, maybe not. I don't think so. This is the list of stuff that Ashes is showing, right? That cumulatively, 4 times the death penalties.
Okay. So if you lose 1,000 XP for a normal death, a PvE death, you're losing 4,000 for killing a green person.
Whatever that entails. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. You can be attacked regardless of your affiliation. So, for instance, if you and I are members of the same guild, I don't know if a guildie could kill me, but there are other affiliations and groups that you can become a part of.
Your citizenship of your node, it's like has part of that as well.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
You can drop equipped items and carried items. So if you've been out there farming wood, and someone else comes in there farming your area in the wood, and you decide to kill them as a result because this is my area, now you're whatever.
Right.
If they get you, if you end up corrupted and they come back and get you, you could actually drop some of the wood that you've been carrying, or
you could drop your nice no drop PvE sword that you got. Or
your PvP gear, right?
Or your armor or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Another thing, this is an interesting one. You respawn at random locations within the vicinity, whereas the person that you picked on always respawns at the closest one, at the closest respawn node. So you could be halfway across the map and have to make your way back. It's just another level of inconvenience, right? Experience debt is another. Now, to what extent and the mechanics of that, I'm not quite sure, right? But you end up having to, and I got to experience some experience debt in Alpha 1. Trust me, it's no fun. Here, there are you cannot do player-to-player trading. You cannot interact.
You can't do. But if you get killed and you clear it, then you could do player-to-player trading.
Correct. All right. You cannot interact with NPCs. Okay. You cannot store items in the public warehouse. You can in your private freehold, in your own private storage, but public storage facilities you can't access, right? And then obviously death has with it the cost of gear degradation, because in order to clear it, you have to die more. You will be more subject to getting more degradation on that gear, right? So even if you're not dropping the pieces, in order to clear the corruption, you have to die, which hurts your gear.
Okay, so that's a fair list of things that you can.
You are also visible. There's more, but wait. So you're also and this is the last one I have on the list. Is you're visible to at some point. I mean, I don't know if it's slightly whatever you're not, but there's a threshold in there somewhere where you actually ping on the world map and are visible as a huntable target for bounty hunters. Now you can defend yourself against bounty hunters, and if somebody comes to kill you as a bounty hunter, if they get you, it helps clear your corruption, but you're not subject to dampening against them, right? So if somebody comes against you as a bounty hunter, you actually are able to defend yourself as a corrupted player. But you get griefed as a griefer, essentially, is all of that happens. I want to throw that out there Because that's all of the stuff right now that Steven believes is going to disincentivize you from killing people that have not opted in to PvP open world. Okay.
Let's address a couple things here. The Hawkins, you said it's surely not as simple as one death and a full reset. Depends on how corrupted you are, how many deaths it will take to clear it. We don't know that if one kill making you red will be cleared by one death, but one kill is definitely less to clear than 3 kills.
Right.
We know that much. So, and I think everything is on a sliding scale, which I think is kind of Steven's answer to these. But that only addresses a portion of the griefing spectrum. If I decide to grief you by pulling and I'm able to pull 15 mobs onto your group as they're trying to fight in a dungeon, I'm not going to get flagged for that.
Right.
I might be willing to eat a PvE death, but I'm also going to wipe out your entire group.
Right. So yeah, there are some other things. Now,
there are other things. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Redbeard Flynn raises a decent point. He's like, if there's so much disincentivization here, why even allow it at all? To which I say, have you ever been killing? This happens to me frequently. That's why it's my example, right? I am killing a mob because I know this mob is going to attack me if I mine that node. So I'm killing the mob, and some guy runs up and he mines the node while I'm killing the mob, and I'm like, why do you think I'm fighting this thing? Right, but he's come up and he's killed it. At least this time I can put an arrow in him. I may not kill him, but I can let him know, hey, that you're being a jerk, right? That's the only, I wouldn't want to kill him, but I will let some arrows fly here and there.
Right.
So I don't know.
Steven did mention that the customer service will take action against certain behaviors. And they will be active and handling things like that. I'm wondering if mob training is going to be one of those things that they will that they would address, and how much information do you have to get in order to make sure that person gets handled? Like you need their name, and
how do you report a group, right?
Right.
And another question is, and it's one of the things I think that matters to the community. Personally, I don't trust customer service to respond like they should. You know what I'm saying? In general, I've seen people have been like, I've sent you videos. Why haven't you responded? I have seen posts like that. I've reported, here's a video, nothing. You guys have done nothing. Right. And the studio is incentivized not to get rid of these people. These people are paying them to play their game. Why would they get rid of people? You know what I'm saying? So only in the most egregious cases, but even then it's a little bit of a small smack on the wrist, right? We've seen this happening. This is not going far afield, right? But even on Twitch, where people do the most egregious, awful things and get nothing because they pull a lot of viewers, right? So the companies that run these platforms, that run these games, are incentivized not to get rid of the people that happen to be doing this. So how much do you trust customer service is going to be a question as well.
Right.
I think that
they're going to have to prove themselves as a customer service company.
Right. Yeah. So we will see. Moving on.
We will see.
We will all watch his player base deteriorate. It will then have a fraction of the income that it needs to put out epic size expansions on par with major MMOs today. The flagging system doesn't work as well as it needs to. It doesn't protect the masses, and it rewards foul play. It creates a toxic culture in the game where the most unpleasant types of personalities survive and thrive. But there are a small percentage of players who enjoy this. Don't worry, I have a solution for you too that will make you sweaty hardcore PvPers happy. My goal here isn't to have the devs create a game that you can enjoy. I am not trying to take away your PvP experience. I am trying to ensure that AOC is popular enough to get massive expansions that keep the game alive and thriving for both the PvE and the PvP players. Make no mistake, if this game is made for the super small subset of MMO players that enjoy this type of content, it will not get exciting expansions on the scale of other MMOs today. Right now, this is being made for PvP Andies who are already a small subset of that already.
I think he's putting too much stock in the notion that this is going to hurt the player base. The numbers are going to go down. it's going to have a rippling effect in that the next thing is effect is that you don't have enough income to support the studio that then develops new content, and the whole thing will unravel after that. There's too much there. I mean, I think it would have to be an egregiously bad system for that to be the case.
I think that we'll have to wait and see. Like, it depends on how bad it is, how like, is it just in a certain area? Okay, if I avoid that area because that's where the hometown of the sweaty PvPers is, to use his term, and if I'm on the other side of the map, it doesn't affect me. Then yeah, you're right. It's not going to have that. But if it's rampant and uncontrolled, that you to the point in which the average person can't get things done because of these large bands of PvPers locking down content,
that's basically Mad Max.
I do see that being an issue.
Yeah, I don't think Mad Max is going to be the world, right? Where it's you as a single, solitary, lonely person just trying to do your business gets stuck in Thunderdome. You know what I'm saying? Having to fight these people. I don't see that as the world here. I mean, I think it's an exaggeration of what the reality will be. But all of this is anecdotal, right? And we don't necessarily know.
Right.
You're going to have to try it. You're going to have to live it before we really know what the reality is going to be.
Yeah, we're going to have to see Alpha 2 before we can really say it. The question is Steven's ego too big to the point where he will double down and not change it? So far, from what he said, this is his system and he's going with it come hell or high water.
He has doubled down. I think that would be wise to be ready to switch to I think they should have 2 or 3 or 4 cards to play here. You know what I'm saying? You know, even in terms of like a vast overhauls of systems, so that they have one running, and if it doesn't work, let's try number 2.
Right.
You know, have your options open, because you may need them. So,
I think Steven in general doesn't have a big ego, but I think Steven has a big ego as far as his plans for this game are concerned. Like, I think this is his baby. He's chosen how he wants to do it, and he's going to make that vision work, if at all possible. And I don't want to say to the detriment of everything else, because I think he's a businessman at heart, but I think it'll take a lot for him to change.
I think he's a visionary who's committed to his vision. This is I'm responding directly to Hawkins, right? I don't think Steven has the ego. I just think he's a visionary, and he wants to give his vision a shot. You know, he wants to, and I think that's fair. You know what I'm saying? Goodness me, he's designed a game for us and has built a studio from nothing on his own dime in order to make this thing happen. I think he deserves a shot at that, and I'm willing to get in and test it and let him get the feedback, right? I just want it to stick around, and I hope that he is adaptable enough to change his vision so that it works for the consumer.
Right. So in other words, if in Alpha 2 he implements this and people are unable to do stuff because of roaming band of Mad Max PvPers, then he needs to address it. If Alpha 2 goes off without a hitch and there's very minimal griefing, then I will be like, you know what? He was right and I was wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Niche community that is the MMO player base, and it's not even made for all PvPers. It's made for the ones who want PvP all the time with no way to turn it off, a microscopic portion of the already tiny MMO community. There aren't enough of you. I'm sorry. Without the unwashed masses that are the PvE gigachads, Ashes will not receive the continued subscription numbers to put out impressive expansions. Right now, AOC is making money hand over fist from those unwashed masses that you PvP players so despise. They are buying this game thinking it's going to be their next World of Warcraft, not realizing it's an always-on PvP grief fest in the making. Oh, you think Asmin or any big streamer is going to enjoy this game? Yeah, right. Those PvP guilds will make sure that every player that streams this game is miserable. They will show up and wipe.
Yeah, I disagree. Asmongold walks around with
he is one of those sweaty PvP.
8,000 people around him, so he will not have any issues doing whatever he wants to do in this game.
Yeah, the same occurred to me as we were watching, for sure.
any and every time they please. Streamers will be forced to leave, PvEers will be forced to leave, so please consider you and I on the same team, my PvP brethren. I am just from the future. I have already played this game. I have already seen how this PvP system plays out. I am the lucky ghost of AOC past. But let's continue. The next type of griefing is less important, so I'll keep it brief, but it's probably something that should ideally be addressed. And I'm bringing it up in hopes that we as a community can have a constructive conversation about something that can easily erode the enjoyment of a game like this. That is an open world game where anyone can walk into your dungeon while you're doing it. Anyone can walk into your raid while you're doing it. There's another type of griefing known as training, or rather grabbing a ton of mobs from other parts of the dungeon and then dragging them over to your group and dropping them on you.
This is not a PvP thing.
Your group was capable of handling the 5 to 10 mobs that they had pulled, but the 20 to 30 mobs that another player just drug over your group is another story. You're going to wipe if the developer.
Incidentally, let me say something. If somebody tries to train stuff on you, that's the time and you don't AoE. If you can have that kind of discipline and your group can have that kind of discipline,
right,
you'll be all right, right? And especially in this game, tab targeting, that's when you switch to tab targeting and you don't have action targeting on. You just select one of the mobs that you're fighting, tab, you'll be okay. Right. There are ways to defend yourself against these kinds of techniques, but you have to be smart about it.
Right.
Don't protect you from this. This is a way that groups grief each other even without having to go purple, circumventing the flagging system entirely. This does not add any positive experiences to the game. It's just another way of rewarding foul play and allowing it to ruin the fun for an entire group of people. My question to you is, what could the developers do to prevent this? What kind of aggro rules could they use to ensure that you can't simply abuse bad AI in this way? How do you prevent one player from wiping any group they want by simply dragging a dungeon's worth of mobs onto them? You can't just
Hawkins, he meant more so that you'll hit a mob in AoE.
Yes. Now that's worth visiting as well, right? The notion that I can toggle and say, hey, I want my AoE to be able to affect players. You're kind of going to want that when you are out there escorting a caravan. There are times you're going to want to do that. I would like to hope that, this is an aside, of course, that when you enter that moving caravan, the game assumes, okay, you're going to be fighting players and enables that. And then when you leave, it turns it off again. Or unless you've opted into having it on all the time, right? But anyway, that's an aside. So
yeah.
For short leashes, because then everyone just skips the dungeon and runs to the end, right? So what can the developers do? And also, what can they do to prevent people from simply griefing you until you leave the cool new dungeon node that was unlocked? Ashes of Creation is going to have two types of PvP. One is the PvP mentioned here already. The no rules barred open world exchanges between groups of.
Let me throw this out, and this is a quick point. With the way that as you level up a node, content unlocks, I think we're going to see this kind of thing happen quite a lot. Where now, oh, hey, hold on a moment, this node just reached tier 4. There's a new dungeon available there within its zone of influence, and people flock to the new content. So I think it's kind of cool, the design of this, that there's 85 different nodes throughout the game, and every one of them has tiers, and at certain tiers, new content unlocks, new world bosses, and people will go there for that new content. It's a very clever design, hanging on to your content locusts. Problem is that everybody will be there, right? And if you're going there, if you don't hold back and let them all get it out of their system, and then go there 3 a.m. or go there, a month later, you will be running into this kind of competition. There will be groups fighting groups in these open world dungeons, just for the sake of not wanting to split or not having to wait for the dragon to respawn or whatever else, right? And
especially
that's
those
designed
guilds
that way on purpose.
Yeah, especially those guilds that want the server first.
Yes, and that's going to be great, and it's a good way. Like it's by design. He wants it so that if you are the server first to kill that dragon, you had to earn it, and you had to overcome not just the PvE elements, but the PvP as well.
Right.
It's part of the design here. So Sorry.
These will not be even matches. The engaging group will make sure they have more players than the group they engage with. They will make sure they have better gear. They will make sure they are higher level, and they will probably make sure that the group they are engaging with is mid-combat with some NPC enemies. The other type of PvP is the more organized and scheduled castle sieges, where guilds sign up to help other guilds defend or attack a castle. This massive scale organized PvP tends to be one that many more players enjoy. It's scheduled, it's all out, and everyone is there to PvP, and there's a lot on the line.
Those are fun, by the way.
The winning side makes a ton of money, and so there's a lot of incentive to successfully defend or attack these castles. Again, we know this because it's straight from Lineage 2. So I'm going to propose a solution where everyone wins, where the PvPers get what the PvPers want, and the PvEers get what the PvEers want, one of which is to drastically improve their planned flagging system to prevent people from simply circumventing all of its punishments by griefing people until they die.
Perhaps there should be a separate meter that fills up when you attack a white or non-combatant player. This would limit the number of times you could grief an individual that wasn't interested in fighting back. The meter would eventually fill up all the way and turn the player corrupt if they harass the non-combatant player too many times in a defined period of time. This would at least prevent a player from infinitely harassing a player or...
How about immediately? Because that's what's in place.
Right.
Okay. No meter, you automatically get corrupted.
And the meter filling up is you going to 0 attack power.
Yes, the more you do it, right? Yeah, and then at that point, that level 10 can turn around and kill you and pick up one of your elite pieces of gear, assuming you drop it.
Yeah.
So...
interested in PvP. It would also limit the number of people's days one player could negatively impact through griefing. I think something like this alone would greatly reduce the amount of ill-intentioned griefing on the server and greatly improve the experience of the average player. Any portion of this meter that is filled by attacking a non-combatant player would be reset if that player decided to attack back. This way, we're not preventing the number of meaningful PvP engagements a player can have, just the number of times a player can grief another player. This still wouldn't protect the average unwashed masses that are the PvE MMO players, but it would at least be a step in the right direction to mitigating some of the griefing that will inevitably cause all of them to leave. And make no mistake, they will leave, and so will their subscription. And if you didn't know, PvE players prop up massive MMOs. PvE players keep massive MMOs afloat, period. And more realistically, this next thing is probably the best solution, and it's simple. It's effective. It's not reinventing any wheels, and there really aren't any downsides. Perhaps the developers should just consider two types of servers: AOC PvE servers and AOC PvP servers. Let the PvPers that have been furiously listening to this YouTube video with steam coming out of their ears at the mere thought.
Again, I want to say this is where he demonstrates, I think, that he does not understand, has not spent enough time really studying, and that's fine. Like, welcome to the community. It's good to have you here, friend.
Right.
But and I think that's what Lazy Peon has done, is think through, okay, if you disable on a PvE server, what becomes meaningless as a result? Well, the dominoes begin to fall. You're right. The system after system gets hollowed out by the fact that there is no PvP.
Yeah. To Redbeard's comment there about the PvP toggle, there is a benefit in Ashes 2 being flagged. If you get killed while you are not flagged, you drop, as the non-flagged person getting killed, you drop more materials, crafting materials specifically, than you would if you were flagged.
You are incentivized to fight back. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there is some incentive to making that choice to be flagged or not be flagged. Now, if I'm running around and I'm not carrying any craftable materials, I'll probably stay green and let somebody kill me, because they have more to lose than I do at that point.
Right. If you've got a trunk full of stuff and you're out there gathering or something, you're incentivized to defend it by
right.
if they try to kill you. But if you don't have very much, and you know, then by all means let them kill you and suffer the corruption.
Right.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Kind of disgusting Care Bear MMO. Let them.
Let me pause here too. At its heart, do you see an issue with having a PvE server in Ashes, Sakari?
I don't disagree with the principle. If this decision had been made way back in the design, and they designed the systems to be able to do that, I think PvP being a open world PvP being an assumed tenant on which everything else is built when you pull that rug out from underneath it, stuff begins to fall down, right? And
Okay.
some stuff will be standing, but it won't be the full experience of what the game is intended to be. There'll just be too many systems that'll be half functioning, all broken, because it assumes.
So you say it's inherently different than having a PvP server in a PvE game. Because of that, because of the systems that rely on PvP.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So basically, PvEers, if that was the case, PvEers would be being cheated of the full experience because of that. Now, maybe they're okay with that. That's a different question, right? A matter for discussion. And I couldn't answer that. They would have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think as somebody who prefers PvE, I think that having the option to be in a PvE server where, like I said, if caravans were still moving PvP zones, where maybe even the oceans are PvP set, but all the land is optional. I don't think I'd have a problem with that personally.
Yeah, and I wouldn't either. I mean, we've played other MMOs where a New World, the most recent one, right? Where if you don't want to participate in PvP, you just don't flag for it, and you can go around, do anything you need to, and be just fine, right? And you opt in, but they incentivize it a little bit by giving you maybe more XP or whatever. It's incentivized PvP flagging.
Right. And Jim, I think that the sieges and the caravans would definitely have to still be PvP centric, like at a minimum, and maybe ocean-bound caravans, and not just ocean travel, but ocean-bound caravans would have to be. I think that for the game to have any meaning, those would have to at least remain. But at least you could carry on, and just be a basic PvE player everywhere else. I do recall now that somebody mentioned certain zones that are PvP enabled. They had that in SWTOR, didn't they? Remember on Tatooine there was that area that was if you went into it you got flagged, like you couldn't avoid it.
Right, and nobody was ever there.
Right, you ran in there to do specific quests, or if you're trying for an achievement or something, and you like ran in, hid, and ran out.
Yeah, you'd stealth your way through it. Maybe that would be the way to do it. So if you had that option,
PvP-centric AOC game just the way it's been designed, but also create a version of this game that will appeal to far, far more players. A version of this game where you can't attack a player unless they've opted into PvP. The PvE servers would still have plenty of PvP content. PvE servers would still have sieges, wars, caravans, dueling, etc. Tons of opt-in PvP. But you would not be able to as easily grief other players into quitting the game entirely. You wouldn't be able to ruin other people's dungeon experiences. You wouldn't be able to do the same during raids. Or maybe you do something completely different and you have specific areas that are PvP on and areas that are PvP off on one server. Some nodes are PvP, some nodes are PvE. Some dungeons allow it, some don't. But the fact is, if you don't give the PvE players that have no interest in griefing other people into quitting and have no interest in being the player that is griefed until they quit, if you don't give these players a way to play the game, or if you don't come up with a better plan to protect them from the bad apples, you're going to watch as griefers destroy your player numbers. You're going to watch as the launch is marred with.
All right, I'm going to pause here as well and throw this out there. This is Mox's point that I find myself defending against, but I'm going to make his point here. This is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. Group up for Pete's sake. You're safer in numbers, right? I mean, I
think the point he's making, though, is that you're not safe in numbers because you're going to have these huge. He's envisioning these huge roving
groups,
Mad Max groups that are going around the countryside murdering people.
Burninating the villages. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? And I've done this. I've had this in MMOs, right? Where if you hang out with a couple friends and you go out there together to do things, and he's even mentioned if you're going in this video that we spoke about, not the bow one, but the more recent gathering one, right? There may be a saw that is a 2-person saw that you have to operate to cut tree, and everybody gets some logs out of it. It's probably worth grouping out to go out there even for gathering kind of things, right? So safety in numbers. If you don't, that's another deterrent. You are not completely helpless and at the mercy of these systems. There are things that you can do in order to defend yourself, right? In order to be a harder target, so take that into account as well.
Right.
With negative headlines and a mask.
Sorry, go ahead.
access from the game. Players complaining about
All right, we haven't mentioned enough. There is the bounty hunter system, which we haven't seen really implemented yet. Like, how powerful is that? Like, if I'm in town, I'm a bounty hunter, do I get a ping that somebody nearby just became corrupted, and I get bonuses against that person because I'm a bounty hunter? So you're gonna have sheriffs and white knights and stuff out there too. So that there is that, like, that I don't know has been in these other games. Like, did Lineage 2 have a bounty hunter system? Like, that is really cool.
I remember Star Wars Galaxies had bounty hunters, and you could. There was a period in there, I think it was right before NGE, maybe. I'm sorry for getting nerdy on you, but where if you killed somebody, they could put a bounty on you, and the bounty hunters would come get you. I experienced that, and it was kind of fun. Like, it was fun from the bounty hunting perspective to go through the bounty thing, find the person, and go look for them. It was a blast. So
cool.
Yeah.
Redbeard, I am a big advocate of exactly what Sakari said there, man. These are MMOs. Like, while there should be content for solo people to do, people that want to do stuff alone, the vast majority of the world should be group centric. And I know that's in some circles that's not a popular opinion.
He's a bit of a hardliner.
It's an MMO, for goodness sake.
Yeah. Now, I'm typically the one arguing, give laissez-faire, right? Like, make this big open world, and if people want to group, let them group. If they want to solo, let them solo. That's still the case here. You can go out and solo, but in this case, risk versus reward, right? Right? You're out there. It's more risky. What exactly is your reward to be a solo player? I wonder maybe if Steven should think that through. Can we reward solo players? Because I think if you give good rewards to people out there soloing, the incentive to group up into these massive roving Mad Max like groups, maybe how do we disincentivize that? Maybe that's what it needs to be, thinking about, and incentivize smaller groups.
Indeed.
Loot, players complaining about being camped, players complaining about not being able to go solo in the new cool areas you added, or group in the newly unlocked nodes because they just get griefed when they go to these places anyway. I know this video probably angered a lot of you, but remember, I'm trying to help AOC, not kill AOC. I'm here to stop the griefing. I'm not here to stop the PvP. There's a massive difference there, and I hope that's what you focus on. I selfishly want this game to succeed so that I can get lost in it for months and for years. I want it to do well so that I can make content about it for months and for years, but I am also a realist. I know that sucking in the copium and pretending that a PvP-centric MMO is going to be just fine and do well is a lie. And I know what's happened to every PvP MMO ever released. Their expansions are small, their lives are short, and their declines often very rapid. And I don't want to see that happen to AOC. There needs to be a version of this game that appeals to and maintains the attention of the PvE player. If not, then I guess there's always that Riot MMO, right boys? Suck down that copium. Sound off in the comments below. I really hope you try to come up with solutions instead of attacks. It doesn't matter how much you hate PvE Care Bears or sweaty PvPers, but if you type out a comment with a proposed solution, you could be the person that saves AOC. So go and try, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get a version of this game that PvPers and PvEers alike can enjoy. The purpose of this video is to start a discussion around Ashes of Creation's Achilles heel, the obvious problem and the obvious hill that it's going to have to climb upon its release. And if we talk about it now while it's in its alpha, early alpha, long before it's released, it has a much better chance of making the adjustments needed to appeal to a broader player base and to having better, more filled out expansions.
I would like to see a video where he has done his homework and is conversant with the disincentives, the corruption system, etc.
Right.
And
with the nuances.
And comes back to, with that in mind, because right now it's all kind of theoretical. I know, I mean, he's experienced the system that doesn't work. So has Steven. Steven's got some adjustments he wants to try. We haven't yet tried them. Everyone's telling him this whole system won't work. Look at the old system that doesn't work. He's like, but you haven't tried what I have in mind to try to make it work. We've got to do that before we can say no to this. I think that's a good place to be. Right. I agree with Steven. Hey, can we give this a test before we sack the whole thing? And,
right. Before we start yelling, the sky is falling. Let's see if Steven, put up the props necessary to keep it up in the sky.
Right. Yeah. Right.
As the game goes on, all I want for the game is to have its best chance of maintaining its player base, because I love what I've seen so far. I love
and we're all on the same
that it's in, and I can't
team.
wait to get lost in
I agree
it.
with him.
I am not trying to change this into a Care Bear PvE game, and that's why I think maybe one of the best solutions is to leave the game as it was designed for the PvPers that want that hardcore PvP experience always on, and maybe something else, maybe another server for the PvEers. And I know there's going to be a lot of comments from PvPers saying just get good or just don't play the game, and that's fine. That's what a lot of people will choose to do.
He's right.
If the game comes out
again,
as
it's something I want to say this, and I actually want to speak to the idea of it in Pantheon as well. Just get good, or this is just not the game for you. I don't like those answers. Oh, this just isn't your game, right? You know.
Right.
We want these games to survive. The more people that play them, the better.
Right, but Steven has said this game isn't going to be for everybody.
I don't like that. And I don't like it coming out of Steven's mouth, just like I don't like it coming out of my mouth or anybody in Pantheon.
Okay,
right?
fair enough.
Like, everybody should be like, what do we have to do to make converts, right? This is a game for you. Come play it. So, sorry, it's axe to grind.
I appreciate the fact that he brought up this argument, though. It has the fact that Steven replied to it, that the Lazy Peon replied to it, that we're talking about it. It engaged a discussion, which can only help the process.
Right. And the forums, I guarantee, are going crazy.
Oh, probably, yeah.
All right, let's finish this up and then move on to the next one.
Just won't play it. A massive shout out to my YouTube members. Thank you for supporting this channel. And
I think we are wrapped up there. All right, so do we want to play Steven's response?
I knew Redbeard would like that because he's saying the same thing. I've seen videos where he says the same thing. By the way, those of you who are here, go check out Redbeard Flynn's channel as well. He's got a lot of good contributions to, especially Pantheon. Let's load up the other video and make it happen. I know that we can.
Okay.
We can do this.
Second.
So while he's doing that, just to kind of preface, now that we've got more people watching from when we launched, let me point you again to the Lazy Peons video. He put out a recent kind of his own answer to this whole thing at the tail end of a video that was like, hey, let me catch you up. Kind of an addendum to his Woohoo Ashes is the best game to come along in years video. He put that out recently. Published an addendum to that, and at the end of his addendum video, which we have linked in our description, actually engages this as well, right? So go check that out. Definitely worth doing. What we're going to switch to now is the section of the live stream from October that they just did, where Steven actually took a moment to answer this, because here we are, right? So they actually developed, just spent a whole time to talk about PvP and griefing, and he doubled down. Given what we've said, none of it should be a surprise. You're right. He makes arguments that we've kind of been discussing in this live stream so far. So, go ahead and play.
Are you good to go?
Yes, we are.
All right.
That is a good question. So first, I asked Margaret this week to include for our stream today a section to discuss PvP, risk versus reward, and griefing, right? In the live stream, and that's because there's been some healthy discussion within our community and within the MMORPG gaming community at large about what types of systems players have played in the past that our flagging system might draw inspiration from, what the role of that system played in combating griefing.
By the way, yes, that's how Margaret actually really looks. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, they modeled the snorts after her.
Yeah, just to address the snorts in the room, right?
And yes, Aaron, that is his house. If you've watched a few videos, he like moves around within his house, and like it's palatial.
Yeah.
He's a really, really well-off dude.
And deserves to be. He's like a serial entrepreneur, right? And Ashes is just the latest, venture. So.
Yep.
Okay. Resume.
But allowing a sense of risk within the world. And then what is our objective by implementing, let's say, an open world flagging system? And I wanted to have an opportunity to kind of discuss and convey. Once again, and I know we've done this in the past, but obviously as development continues, as we provide updates of the development and it garners more attention and more eyes from the MMORPG player base at large, and not necessarily those of you who have been following the project for a long period of time, you're going to get new users and new members of our community who are excited about what they're seeing, and they're going to learn about systems slowly over time. And the one thing I want to make sure that we are very clear about within the Ashes of Creation community is that we are always polite and that we are willing to explain and help direct people to information. There is a wonderful resource out there that's managed and built by Lex, who's one of our great community members, who has
I think he's just saying in a nicer way what we've already said in this live stream. It's like, okay, you don't have all the information, go to the wiki.
Right. And I have to give kudos to them, because their wiki, as far as games are concerned, is one of the best I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is very good. Yeah.
Definitely.
Taken a lot of information, references, resources, and poured it into an Ashes of Creation wiki. And one thing I would recommend to those of you who are new to following the project and excited about the potential of Ashes of Creation, make sure that you engage with our community on Discord, on the forums, on Reddit, and you ask people questions, but also that you take it upon yourself, if you are interested, right, to go to the Ashes Wiki, to go to our website, to go to YouTube and kind of watch and explore and read and take in kind of everything that this game is about and what its philosophy is meant to represent and why the game is being made, right? That's a really good step to take if you want to be an informed, consumer and follower of the game. And of course, if following development is not for you, that's totally fine too, because it's not a journey that's made for everyone, and that's cool. What I want to say about the recent topic of the open world flagging system and PvP and Ashes of Creation is that there's a very strong emphasis for how PvP and risk are represented within Ashes of Creation, in that it is meaningful, in that it has the ability to catalyze change within the world through both opt-in systems that are designated, timed, and more controlled, to elements in PvP that are more outside.
I got disconnected from.
I did too.
Give
me a second.
All right, so I'll let you get back to that. And I'll switch us back to the other scene. In the meanwhile, so technical difficulties for a second. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
No, I'm the same way. To our community that are commenting on the state of Steven's house. It is beautiful. Like, it's great to see what all he has and how successful he's been, and also to wish that I had been that successful myself. Yeah. So.
Okay, Sakari, you should have like a little red square say reconnect to.
I do, yes. Connecting. Alright, let me get this set up and then I will.
And I'll back up a few seconds as well.
Okay, I think we're good to go. And like whenever you're ready, let me switch to the other scene.
Alright, here we go. I backed up 20 seconds.
Okay.
Very strong emphasis for how PvP and risk are represented within Ashes of Creation, in that it is meaningful, in that it has the ability to catalyze change within the world through both opt-in systems that are designated, timed, and more controlled, to elements in PvP that are more outside of your control. And I think that's where the concern really lies, is when PvP enters the realm of being outside of your control. Now, the reason I believe in player behavior that we have concerns about the ability for others outside of our control and consent to affect our gameplay is because oftentimes in games where that's the case, you run into a state of griefing. And it's often expressed that you can implement systems and rules in such a way where you curtail that level or frequency of griefing, right? But you can't completely eliminate it, that people will find a way. What is it? Life finds a way, right? That I guess essentially griefers are dinosaurs and they just eat you. No, I'm just kidding. Not the case. But what we tried to do, or what I've tried to do, is take a system that I experienced in the past.
Okay, here we go.
And refine it in such a way where the large portion of griefing that had the potential to occur in previous systems is mitigated even further. And when we think about griefing and we think about what is griefing, griefing isn't necessarily the realization of risk, right? Risk is a healthy thing.
Just let me throw this out here. It's interesting to me that his solution to that wasn't to reject the system. It was to tweak the system. Where it goes, what the reward is or was having of that system, he obviously felt there was something worth hanging on to. That, I think, is one of the questions at the heart of all of this. Why, the people that want PvE or servers are saying just reject the system. The system didn't work, and he's saying, well, the system can work. Let's just make ways to mitigate it. Yes, but isn't that basically to disincentivize it? But the more you disincentivize, are we just getting together further and further and further toward rejecting the system? Right? How close do you want to go?
Right.
Another thing is that he's talking about curtailing griefing. He's not talking about eliminating it. It will still be out there.
Right, because I think he's realistic in understanding that we're dealing with humans, and in a large case, we're dealing with humans that enjoy that, and that was that in that academic paper they did that Venn diagram, and every single type of griefer is in a circle that said enjoyment or happiness. They gain happiness from their whatever type of griefing they're doing. That's
there is a
their
reward.
reward from it. So his job is to mitigate it. He will never. It's unrealistic to say that you'll be able to eliminate it. There are ways that you could eliminate mob training by locking encounters, but then that gets away from the whole. Well, let's have two different groups compete for the same boss mob.
Right.
So yeah.
Risk makes us value reward. Without risk, we would not pursue certain achievements because anybody could achieve them. Risk makes us have a sense of thrill or have some sense of anxiety, right? And those are all emotional responses that get elicited when risk is present. So
he's trying to sell us his vision right here,
risk.
By the way.
Risk is good not just in PvP, but in PvE as well. When you can't always predict the environment or encounter that you're a part of, risk is something like, I've never seen this boss do that before, or these ads came at an ill-placed time.
That sounds similar.
There's a trap here that
Pantheon.
I didn't experience before. There's a lot of elements that risk introduces that keep gameplay less stale, that keep it more dynamic, that introduce environments where the unexpected can occur. That is a good thing. Now, the question is, when risk becomes something that doesn't stop other players from impacting your gameplay in a negative, harassing, and repetitive manner, that the motivation to do that action is less about their personal advancement and more about impacting your gameplay, because when they elicit the response of anger or rage from the player, they feel a sense of accomplishment. That, in my opinion, is what griefing is. It is outside of the expectation of the gameplay behavior that's being communicated in the design philosophy, right? Mm-hmm. That is something that our system is intended to stop, but keeping risk still alive. And there's a fine line there, right?
Yeah.
Because
okay, so And here's where I'm going to start to diverge with Steven. So far, I'm like, okay, let's give this a shot. But humans come up with insurance policies. We have ways that we come up with to mitigate risk or to lessen risk. And what he said is what we're going to do is you've got risk and reward, right? And the reward is that you get your jollies from hurting people. So we're going to increase the risk to where you can still do it if you want to, but it could really hurt you. So you're going to think twice about doing it. That's his way to curtail this, right? And I don't doubt it'll work in a lot of ways. So the question people are going to come up with is, the same thing that I do when I get in my car. I get in my car and I have X chance of having an accident and suffering financial losses of having written off my car. Right. So we invent insurance, and it's my way to mitigate that loss. If I have that, I've now paid for a policy that pays out. It's a bit of a hassle, but I can get set back up. I can essentially walk away from this if everything goes right with no long-term consequences of having taken that risk. That's what people are going to do in this game, right? So I think on a small level, on a microcosm level, where you or maybe a friend are out there in the wild and you run into another person and their friend running out there in the wild, these systems are perfect. They work like they will probably work like they should. But people who want to do the griefing will come up with ways to mitigate their risk. And I think large grouping is probably by far the most effective way to do that. So there's more to that equation, right? You don't just have the weight of the reward of griefing versus the risk on the other side. And if you get that those two variables right, this whole system is fixed, right? Because they're going to come up with more on the risk side that goes, okay, well, what happens if I have a big group and now me and my group go out and we all just go attack these 2 or 3 players that are out there, but out of this 18 of us, number 17 gets the killing blow, so now he's corrupted, and we all laugh at him. You're corrupted. And then we all go rage across to this other thing, and we kill 5 other players, right? And person 2 and 3 get the corruption. Or what happens if we all go out and we all soften this person up, but we've made sure that the only person that gets the killing blows is person number 4, right? So that all the corruption piles up on them, and the rest of us essentially are getting away with murder. Right.
Does corruption happen at the time of killing, or does corruption happen at the time of attacking?
To my knowledge, it's killing, not attacking. To my knowledge, again, correct me, please, those of you who are. If I'm wrong and you know more, I'm happy to.
Or if you have the wiki open and can let us know.
Yeah, I think it's killing. Yeah.
Okay. So. Somebody asked, Hawkins asked, what we define by griefing. Griefing is defined. There's several things. I would say repeated uninvited PvP is like probably the main one that you typically find.
Really, for you, it's not killing; it's engaging in PvP. That's interesting. It's not being killed; it's being forced to engage in PvP. That's your one of your criteria.
Well, I assume that the attack is going to result in a death. Like, you don't attack somebody to drive them off. You generally attack them to kill them.
Right, true. But if you're the person who starts getting wailed on and you're able to defend yourself and kill this person, you don't feel good.
Right. If you flag up and kill them, then that's not griefing.
They griefed you. You just happen to defend yourself.
Right, but I think it's the repeated. It's more of the repeated killing, like corpse camping, things like that. Like, that is, to me, is griefing. A single PvP encounter does not constitute griefing, in my opinion. Yeah, it has to elevate beyond that. It has to be, a group of 30 people come on to one person and they kill them.
Or a repetitive action. Right. There's no way to defend yourself, and it's ongoing. Right. And let me throw in as well, in large part, I kind of agree with that definition, but I also think griefing is much broader. In the beginning of the live stream,
mob training, scamming is one. Like, if you're running some sort of lottery system, and
reporting,
you're
right?
Money.
Abusing the reporting system, or there's a lot of other behaviors that are PvP irrelevant that are still also griefing, right? It's a way to hurt someone, or to damage their reputation, or to negatively impact their gameplay in some way. Griefing is a very large umbrella, and there's all of those different.
Right, trying to prevent somebody from doing what they were doing ultimately outside. And again, a single kill. I don't think you got somebody similar level comes across you. They decide to engage you. You fight back. Win or lose. That's not griefing. But level 60 coming into a level 15 zone and killing everybody off. That's griefing. And yes, there is an article that I will add it to the description as well. It's an academic article, Hawkins. I don't know if you were here for the beginning. It's really interesting. It talks about the griefing, the motivations, and they actually discovered in doing the paper a couple new types of griefers that they came across. It was really neat. So definitely take a look at that. If they skim it, read the whole thing if you're so inclined. But it is interesting.
Yeah. I'll let you push.
We got about 10 more minutes of Steven here.
We'll push through. Let's do it.
You have to provide for the environment where player actions are unpredictable. And yes, they could impact gameplay, but you want to create a system that deters that player from reaping a reward from griefing. Because when you deter them from that, the occasions in which griefing happens gets mitigated. That becomes very few, very, very less frequent.
This is very theoretical.
Is willing to accept loss
very theoretical
as an impact for being able to affect another person's gameplay. And the corruption system that's in Ashes of Creation, I believe, will stop that behavior to a significant degree, to the point where it is a very, very minor, if not at all, experience situation for many players, but the risk is still there, right? And that's something that requires testing. That's something that requires us in Alpha 2, in the betas, to see how we turn the dials of corruption, that the risk profile of corruption is high enough to reach.
Let me pause right here to address Hawkins' question, right? Ruining their land, over farming to inhibit them. In the most recent gathering discussion, Steven actually mentioned that as a legitimate form of warfare. You could go into another node, and it is griefing. It is a kind of griefing. It's a community on community griefing, which is not, I think, in scope for this. Right, but you can do economic warfare on another node by destroying their land and resources. If you take it, but you obviously have to go in there in numbers and over farm, whatever to really reduce the land management score. Right, it is a legitimate version. I think that's freaking cool. I think it would suck to be a part of the node where that's happened to you. What are you going to do? Do you declare war on them? I don't know. It sounds like a lot of fun. But being a part of the politics and how are we going to retaliate? That's what this is, right? That's the fun and games of this. So yes, I agree that is kind of a griefing, but there's some kinds of griefing are actually a part of the community on community milieu of this. Of the server.
Ooh, French.
I don't know. I probably misused that word, but anyway, let's keep playing so that I can pretend like I didn't say
the
it.
level of that deterrent.
Oh, did you push play?
Okay. And that's something that we can't really opine on right now. Sometimes creators like to make very emphatic statements like, you will not like this system. This system will not be good for
creators, aka LuckyGhost.
Clickbait. Yeah, exactly.
What we are doing is we're innovating on the systems that have come before by enacting changes to that system.
He's doing a good job.
Address the shortcomings of previous systems.
Addressing
and we have to play
misinformation
test that first. It is my expectation that this system will perform very well in keeping risk alive, but significantly curtailing or deterring the ability for players to grief, because we all agree that griefing isn't good. Griefing's not fun. That's not the intended game design. And for players who work outside of the system to overly grief and harass other players in a way that is that is just not intended game design, those are actionable events. Those are potentially CS actionable events, right? You don't want
do we
other
trust
players
them?
just
Will they do it?
ruin other
That's
players'
to be
game
determined.
experience.
It depends on how quickly they respond to tickets. Like, if they respond to tickets in a prompt fashion, then kudos to them. My experience with MMO games has been that, you submit a ticket and 2 days later you hear something.
Yeah. And if there's even any punishments whatsoever, it's entirely too light-handed.
And, get I'm sorry, we're unable to tell you what action was taken,
right.
but rest assured we will deal with it.
Yeah, I'll trust you that you did something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Have we been burned? Probably.
I do have to say, and coming from I'm a filthy PvE guy, looking into all this makes me feel a little bit better about the whole experience of the always-on PvP. That Ashes might not be the dumpster
Hellscape.
fire of PvP that I originally thought it was going to be. Having the bounty hunters out there, having the diminishing abilities and things like that really encourages me to say that I might get ganked every once in a while, but that person's going to pay a price for it, so it might not be as bad as I think.
Okay.
So
see, even Mox can grow, guys. Woo-hoo,
that's our intent behind the corruption system. You can be sure that we will refine that system with the many dials possible in corruption to better tune that so we achieve keeping risk but deterring griefing.
And so that was a long
that was a long monologue
answer for it, but at least you guys have context to where we're going when we're talking about griefing. So let's now drag that into when and how will players encounter PvP, because I think that's been a contentious thing that people have been discussing as well.
I think we need to go into the rest of that because really this topic was more about the griefing side of it as opposed to when PvP is going to occur. We know that PvP is going to occur in Ashes in a lot of places.
Right. I will tell you what, at this point, for the sake of brevity,
yeah,
if there's such a thing,
for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, let us refer everybody to the Ashes of Creation October live stream. You can go and watch the rest of this and just start right here in the PvP.
It's linked in the description along with Lucky Ghosts, the Lazy Peons, and the academic paper. They're all in there.
Okay, so are we done with the videos?
I think we're done with the videos, yeah.
Okay.
I enjoyed the chat, and I appreciate everybody who came out and participated in the chat with us. You guys are a big part of this, and we appreciate your feedback.
Let me throw out there real quick as well.
Yeah.
I think we have to acknowledge just our show, just to wrap up what our take on this is. We realize that there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of unknowns going on here, right? Steven's got this idea he's hoping will work, that we have to submit to the rigorous testing and hope it works. And it may not, and they may have more to do. They may have some redesign coming. We have no idea, right? We're going in this direction. We're hoping it's going to work out, but there's a lot that are still to be determined. And it's good to have these conversations as we go, but there's no definitive way. I mean, if he came up with, we're going to come with PvE servers, is that really the outcome that we're looking for, right? Maybe it's worth giving this a shot and see if it works. And
there's nothing that says 6 months after launch they can't decide to do a PvE server.
Right.
Absolutely nothing, and that could happen.
Yeah. So let's give it a shot and see what happens, and see how Alpha 2 goes, and revisit. So I don't doubt we will revisit plenty times. I think we have already
for sure.
Of times, so.
All right, check us out on our socials at facebook.com/disparateworlds, on Twitter at disparateworlds, our website disparateworlds.org, and our Patreon, which is patreon.com/disparateworlds. In addition, on our website and in the description below is a link to our Discord. Please join us there. We link stuff, we chat about stuff. We'd love to have you guys participate.
Yes, we would. All right, everybody, thank you for those of you who have joined us. We very much appreciate you. As always, likes and subscribes and stuff. Go check out the stuff as Mark's pointed out. It would be great. We appreciate all of you for being a part of our journey as you have. You guys are awesome. We love our community. You guys have been fantastic. So, what do I say, Marks, at the end? I say something
about
be irresistible.
Yes, in your passions and immovable in your principles or something. I don't know.
Do good
like
stuff.
that.
Don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
I think you'll be okay. We'll catch you
Don't
guys
grieve.
later. Thanks.